Women who have ever utilized the service of a male prostitute, what was the experience like? I was at a very low point in my life while I was living in Mexico. Mexico has an abundance of sex work and prostitution. I paid a male prostitute just to cuddle and have him listen to my feelings. It was a good experience. I have abs and am a great listener. Man. FCK working at a warehouse. I'd gladly get paid to cuddle. I was just out of a marriage that had turned S-less for the final years and my sex drive came back with a vengeance. I had a terrible Tinder date that made me feel super unsafe. So I booked a sex worker. He was delightful and lovely and I felt safe and in control. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I saw him twice, then met my partner shortly thereafter, but it was a great experience and I was so happy I did it. As a male prostitute sex worker, it's rare to get hired for a simple one-on-one interaction and it's more for things like birthdays, bachelorette parties, etc. But when I do get hired one-on-one, it's more for people who want the experience instead of desperation or things like that. My boss hires them for herself all the time and as her EA I have to book the guy. She uses him so regularly we just call his personal number and he knows me by name. Reading the comment section is difficult. I'm going to offer an answer. Though I have never paid for male escorts, a fairly well-off and incredibly attractive friend of mine has. She has a high-powered career and is traveling the majority of the year. Her sights are focused on building her career as quickly as possible, so she doesn't currently have time for a relationship. She has paid for male escorts several times a year. Her reasoning is that she would rather have no strings attached sex with a professional rather than risk being disappointed and go through the motions of getting ready for a night out, going to the bar, etc. She explained to me that efficiency and reliability is everything. She is able to request an up-to-date STD test prior to the date and can expect complete discretion. All you people saying women shouldn't have to pay for sex are valid. But if you want some quality control, it makes sense to pay a premium. I'm a female FSSW who is bisexual. I have hired other female providers for myself in the past, but a few years ago, I decided to book a male escort. I booked a dinner date. It was hilarious because he worked for an agency and he knew nothing about me. Save my name. I had been seated at the bar while the table was being prepared and he walked past me twice. He thought I was going to be some weird older lady. So he said, "We had a nice dinner." He was a true gentleman. We did end up having sex. He was exceptionally good looking but had a huge dick. I prefer a more average size. It's much more comfortable for me. For anyone who needs to look it up. They have these sort of gigolos in exotic vacation areas like Jamaica, for example, that cater to older, wealthier women who are looking for the whole 9 yards, not just sex. It's the company, romance and sex they are paying for. This sort of thing is rare as you can imagine, but there are women looking for a good time with company and an exotic male to do it with, as the women themselves may be single or something. A good friend was a male escort. Most his gigs were by very attractive yet professional ladies that didn't want to deal with the hubbub of dating. He was a legit escort, so no sex was implied. He'd get hired for parties and occasions where a date coming would be appropriate. He also mentioned if they struck his fancy and offered a tip at the end of the night. Sex wasn't out of the question. I considered it a few times but never went through with it. It was a time in my life that I was feeling very insecure about my body and decided that if I was ever going to experience sexual pleasure again, I had better damn well pay for it to at least make it worthwhile for the male. Obligatory, not what you asked for, but I've always wanted to hire a prostitute, as I see it as my only possibility to get laid. I haven't once in my life been hit on, flirted with, given a compliment, or had any other sort of intimate or sexual contact with a man. And at 32, I long for it desperately, but realize it won't happen unless I pay someone for their services. The only reason I haven't done so yet is because buying sex is illegal here, and there are barely any straight male escorts anyway. At least not on the major escorts classified sites. I wouldn't really have any expectations. And I don't even believe it'd be particularly good. I'd imagine the situation would be extremely awkward to me. And I could easily see it ending up with me just wanting to hang out for a while. Cuddle and talk. And probably being happy with that. I'd really just want to be seen and touched by a man who at least would pretend that he enjoyed my company. I never have before, but it would probably be a better experience than going on Tinder meeting some guy who will give you the bare minimum and leave when they're satisfied. Yes. I hired one in Thailand lol. I'm a woman who dated one. AMA. He did mostly erotic massage. With some full service. And he said his clients were like 80/20 male to female. Though he was mostly straight in his personal life. This was all going on while we were dating. I didn't mind his profession, was kinda into it. Honestly, but he just wasn't all there. It's hard to describe. He was just needy wannabe white knight Y in a way that made my skin crawl. To the men that keep saying WMNC and GSXNET meaty hey W and like. Okay. But what if she wants to come? Reading the comments, I see a surprising need for professional, compassionate, surely flexible male escorts. If I liked SX or people, I'd consider it. Here. Drop this. I don't think you're going to get a lot of responses for two big reasons. One, because the women who typically hire prostitutes, older with money, are probably not hanging out on Reddit. The other is because there's a lot of shame involved in a woman paying for SX. If you look at these comments, there are a lot of people talking about how women can get laid anytime they want and would never need to pay for it. If a woman were the type of person who would need to pay for it, or want to, this probably isn't the place they'd feel comfortable admitting it. I want a professional who knows what he's doing. If I had the money, it would be on my terms. I'm so sick of fending off men that I don't want. I don't have any confidence at all and sick of being used. I'm disappointed by these answers. Yet unsurprised. Reddit and all. I used to have such bad self-confidence worth etc. that I didn't even think I could pay anyone to SX me up. I also know of a couple people who would use the internet to even learn the proper name of their genitals. One once said they'd consider paying a male prostitute to show them how things work. Luckily, we've all gotten help and are in better places. The internet helped a lot. I don't think I'd mind a visit with one to learn more so things aren't super duper awkward and potentially painful. Our society does a horrible job at teaching the basics, yet expects us all to just know how to make and pop out kids. Here we can see a clear edit moment. I am honestly thinking about losing my virginity to a prostitute one day. I have heard so many bad things about the first time. I was friends with two female SX workers when I lived in Camden and I asked them this question. They said male prostitutes commonly fall into either of the following categories. 1. Bisexual men who are happy to just have sex fluidly with others for money. Not a lot of questions asked and they are often hired to attend sex parties or fulfill a very specific fantasy. Usually involving cosplay. Drugs involved almost always. 2. Hercules bravado types. Usually started out as male strippers or Magic Mike type dancers. Started out with a few MILFs with money and then evolved from there. Extremely well groomed and very touchy about what they do. While I don't agree with how black and white they categorized them, I found it interesting as neither were what I expected. So typical. Question is for women. First response from a dude. Too many angry men here. Tempted by an interesting offer but said no. Years ago, I befriended one of the guys from the Showtime show Gigolos when it was in production, season 1. During my next trip to Vegas, we got together for tapas and drinks. And afterward, he asked if I wanted to hang out in my hotel room. Up to that point, there were only mild compliments and flirting. So I was surprised that he was so forward. I honestly don't know if he wanted to hook up, or thought it was a date. Or if he legit just wanted to continue our friendly night. He was super handsome. Nice. Very intelligent. But I didn't invite him up. He told me he respected that and didn't press further. But we never spoke again after that evening. This is the most toxic and empty comment section ever. It's like if Chernobyl happened in Nevada. Edit. So the Chernobyl wasteland now has life in it and is interesting. All this is gonna be males who talk about going to females. Honestly, I didn't pay any sort of escort service, but one time I did a ghost hunting tour in San Francisco. I think that was the closest I've been to doing anything like this. Absolutely no strings attached and good memories. I was the only person that showed up to this tour, and the dude giving the tour was an absolute babe and barely 21. We had good chemistry and an even better night. 10/10 I highly suggest booking a ghost tour in San Francisco. I have used male escorts before. I am in a cuckold relationship. So my husband and I like to hire a well-endowed man to have sex with me while my husband watches. We have done this 3 times before. And plan on doing it again in the future. You know exactly what you are getting. It's all consensual and everybody has a great time. 1968 or 9 was the year. I met this charming cowboy figure at a psychedelic club in New York City. I paid him handsomely.